television. My name is Mrs. Park and I teach first grade at Robert Smalls International Academy. For today's lesson, we will focus on creating line plots from links of objects. Let's go ahead and take a look at the learning targets within today's lesson. Our goals today are: I can generate data by measuring links of objects, and I can organize the data in a line plot using a horizontal scale. Before we get started, we are going to take a moment and think about some of the important vocabulary in today's learning targets. What were the key words that you heard? If you were listening carefully, the word data might have stood out to you. You may remember from earlier in the year that data is information in numbers, and that we can gather and analyze data. Maybe you noticed the word length. The length of an object refers to how long the object is. Another important vocabulary word is horizontal. When we talk about something that is horizontal, keep in mind that it means it goes from side to side. The last key term I'm going to review is line plot. A line plot is a way of displaying and organizing data. We are going to be working with line plots today. I'm going to go ahead and model for you so you can see how I measure to collect data and then create a line plot. One of the many things that makes math amazing is that you can find it all around you. So I grabbed some everyday objects from my kitchen to make my first line plot. Now, first off, when I am measuring, I am collecting my data in inches. So I need to make sure that I'm using the inches side of the ruler. Next, I'm going to take my first object and carefully align one end of the object up with the first mark on the ruler. Notice that I'm careful to line it up with the first mark. Sometimes it'll have a 0. But I'm looking for the first mark, not the end of the ruler. I'm going to follow the object along until the end of the object, and I see that this object falls in between the 8-inch mark and the 9-inch mark. But remember, we're measuring to the nearest inch. So this is closer to 8 inches long. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that spatula is about 8 inches long. And I'm just going to jot that 8 down so I have it for later on when I need it. When I measure my next object, I'm going to do the same thing. I carefully take my ruler, check that I'm using the inches side, and line the object up with that first mark. Now this time I see that the object lands in between the 7-inch mark and the 8-inch mark. It is closer to the 8-inch mark, so we'll say that this object is also about 8 inches long. Now, I have gone ahead and measured the rest of my objects and organized them into a table so that I am already ready to make my line plot. Now that I am ready to make my line plot, I need to think of a title. So I need to consider what the data is that I looked at and what the data is that I took. Well, what I did was I measured the length of the utensils, or I took the measurements of the utensils. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this line plot utensil measurements. Next, I'm going to use my straight edge to draw a line along the bottom of my paper to make my line plot. After that, I need to write my numbers. Now, the numbers represent the length in inches. So I'm going to write the word inches in the left margin. When I write my numbers, I want to make sure that my scale is at least as big as my greatest number. I see that my greatest measurement is 9 inches. So I will write my numbers horizontally from 1 through 10, making sure to write them neatly and space them evenly. Now I am ready to plot my measurements. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a look. I'm going to take a look at my length of utensils and use those as my data points for my line plot. I look and I can see that I have one object that is 8 inches in length. And I'm going to put that X right above that 8-inch mark. Now, one thing I like to do is cross it off so I make sure that I use each data point only once. I see that my pig spatula was also 8 inches. So when I mark another data point, I'm just going to put it right above the other data point, trying to make sure that everything is neatly in a column. My ice cream scoop was 9 inches. My pig whisk was 7 inches. And then my tablespoon and teaspoon were both 5 inches long. And there I have my line plot. This is what my line plot should look like when it is finished. Now that I have modeled, I will give you a few moments to make sure you have paper and pencil ready for our next part. Okay, let's try one together. Can you tell what we are going to be collecting data on? That's right, we are going to be collecting data on the length of dragonflies. To do that, we will need to measure the length of each dragonfly in inches. So go ahead and measure the objects to collect your data. Notice that I carefully lined the rulers up with the length of the object. You may wish to jot the measurements down. I'm going to give you a few moments to measure. Okay, let's go ahead and let's review your measurements. For the first dragonfly, we're measuring from going left to right horizontally, measuring from the head to the tip of the tail. Now when you look at the tip of the tail, you can see that it is in between the 3-inch mark and the 4-inch mark. But it is closer to the 3-inch mark, so we are going to say that this dragonfly is about 3 inches long. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jot that 3 inches down so I have it when I make my line plot. Let's look at the next dragonfly. Once again, I'm measuring from the head to the tail horizontally, and I see that the tip of this tail ends right before the 3-inch mark. So this dragonfly is also about 3 inches long. For this little dragonfly, I'm measuring him from the tip of his tail to his head. And I can see that he is just over about 2 inches long. Let's take a look at this dragonfly right here. What two numbers does its head fall in between? That's right, it's in between 3 and 4 inches. Which number is it closer to? Very good, it's closer to the 4-inch mark, so we'll say this dragonfly is about 4 inches long. Now looking at this bottom dragonfly, is his tail closer to the 4-inch mark or closer to the 5-inch mark? If you look very carefully, you will see that it is just a little bit closer to the 5-inch mark. So we'll say that this dragonfly is about 5 inches long. Now let's go ahead and set up our line plot. Think of a good title for your line plot. Use a straight edge to draw a horizontal line across the bottom of your paper. Let's go ahead and do that together. What title did you think of? The title I thought of was Dragonfly Measurements. Now, remember, when you are choosing a title, it's okay if your words are a little bit different, but you do want to make sure that you have the key terms that relate to your data in there. Now, below the line, I'm going to write the numbers 1 through 6, but remember these numbers refer to how I measured, and I measured in inches, so I do want to write the word inches in the margin. As I'm writing my numbers from 1 through 6, I'm going to very carefully and neatly write my numbers, making sure that I'm spacing them as evenly as I can. Now let's go ahead and plot our data. So when I look, I can see that I do not have any dragonflies that are 1 inch long. Do I have any dragonflies that are 2 inches long? You're right, I have one dragonfly that is 2 inches long. So I'm going to plot that with an X right above the 2-inch mark. Let me cross out my 2 so I don't accidentally use it again. Do I have any dragonflies that are about 3 inches long? That's right, I have 2 dragonflies that are about 3 inches long. Did I have any dragonflies that were about 4 inches long? Very good, I had one that was about 4 inches long and another that was about 5 inches long. So when I'm finished, my line plot should look similar to this. Now boys and girls, now it is your turn to try one on your own. You will measure the objects to collect your data. Then you will create your line plot. Remember to make sure you have a good title for your line plot. Are you ready? Before you get started measuring, take a look at the objects. So that way you are thinking already about the data you are going to collect. Okay, it's your turn. Go ahead and measure and create your line plot. Okay, let's go ahead and let's review your measurements. About how long did you say the first shell was? That's right, it's in between the 1-inch mark and the 2-inch mark, but it's closer to the 2-inch mark, so it is about 2 inches. For your next shell, you should have said that it is about 5 inches long. And the shell in the bottom left corner is about 4 inches long. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tiny shell next to it. About how long did you say that shell was? Very good. It is about 1 inch long. Now moving back up to the top to the shell in the center. That one is closer to the 2-inch mark than the 3-inch mark, so that shell is about 2 inches long. And then taking a look at the shell in the right-hand corner, it is just before the 3-inch mark, so that shell is about 3 inches long. And looking down at the last shell, you can see that it is just over 5 inches long, so we'll say that this shell is about 5 inches long. So when you are finished with your line plot, it should have looked something like this. Go ahead and check your work. How did you do? Well, boys and girls, we have had an opportunity to practice with measurement and line plots. So let's go ahead and take a look at our learning targets. We said that we would be able to generate data by measuring lengths of objects. We also said that we would be able to organize data in a line plot using a horizontal scale. I am very proud of you for working so hard with me today. If I can, I would like to take a couple of minutes to give your parents some ideas for practicing this at home. Hello, families. One of the wonderful things about math is that you can find examples of it all around you. Some things that you could measure and collect data on are leaves, sticks, or utensils. The possibilities are endless. Now, you might not have access to a ruler right now, but line plots can be used to gather all sorts of data. You could take a daily walk and have your child count how many birds he or she sees each day and plot the data. Surveys of favorite foods, games, movies, and activities are all great ways to collect data for line plots. Have fun exploring with measurement and line plots. And thank you for joining us on Teaching Through Television.
For more episodes of Teaching Through Television, go to the County Channel's YouTube page, click on the playlist, and select your episode.